The knocker was shaped like a lion, its brass mouth worn smooth where a century of hands had struck it. Lord Corvin Halsworth, Duke of Braemore, struck it now once, hard, and the sound of it traveled down Ashcombe Square like a pistol shot. Rain ran from the brim of his hat. His greatcoat was black with water. Somewhere behind him a dog was barking, and somewhere further a carriage rattled over wet cobbles, and the lamp above the door guttered in the wind. He had been on the step 40 seconds, and his patience, which had never been abundant, was gone. He struck the knocker again. Inside the house, a woman was crossing the front hall with a candle in one hand and a shawl clutched tight to her shoulders with the other. Lynette Caro had been upstairs, reading aloud to a housekeeper who had fallen asleep an hour ago, and she had come down to see who was mad enough to knock on a respectable door at this hour. She had told the footman to stay in the kitchen. She did not want a boy of 16 to open a door to whatever was out there. She set the candle on the hall table. She turned the key. She pulled the door back, and there he was. He filled the frame of the door. Tall, she thought, ridiculously tall. Wet, furious, splendidly dressed in black. She did not know his face. She knew only that a man like this did not come to a side door at midnight unless something had gone badly wrong. "Miss Greycourt," he said. She said, "I beg your pardon." "I am Braemore." He said it the way a man says his own name when he expects the name to do his work for him. "You received my letter. I apologize for the hour. I have been delayed by a matter that could not be postponed. I will not keep you long." She did not answer. She could not, for a moment, find words. The rain had drifted across the threshold. It was wetting the hem of her dress. She thought, quite clearly, I am standing in my own doorway, and this man has just given me a name I hate. Braemore, the Duke of Braemore, the family that had bought her father's debts 3 years ago as you might buy a crate of apples, the family that had sold Caromere at auction, the family name she had carried like a splinter in her chest since she was 21, and her father had died of the shame of losing the land his grandfather had planted. Lord Corvin Halsworth, Duke of Braemore. She had never seen his face until this moment. She was looking at it now. "Miss Greycourt," he said again, and she realized he was waiting for her to step back, to invite him in, to let him cross the threshold. "Your Grace," she said, because the word came up out of some drilled place in her upbringing, whether she wished it to or not. She stepped back. He stepped forward. The rain came with him, falling from his coat onto the marble of the hall. She should have corrected him then. She did not. She did not, and she would think about that later, and be unable to decide whether she regretted it. What she did was close the door. "I was given to understand you expected me," he said. His voice was low, clipped, educated, a voice that had been told since boyhood that it would be listened to. "I was given to understand your father approved the arrangement." "My father is dead," she said. Something moved in his face, a flicker, so brief she almost missed it. "Forgive me," he said. "I had not heard. I'm sorry for your loss. It was 3 years ago." "I see. Do you?" He looked at her for the first time then. Really looked. She saw him take in the shawl, the candle, the plain dress she had worn to sit with a housekeeper who did not care what she wore. His eyes were gray, or blue, or some cold color between them. He was perhaps 28 years old. His hair was wet and black. He was not a handsome man exactly, but he was the kind of man a room would go quiet for, and she hated him for that too. "Miss Greycourt," he said, "I do not have a gift for speeches, and I will not pretend to one. You know why I have come. Our families have been in communication for some months. An alliance has been proposed. I have considered it. I find it acceptable. I am here to ask whether you will accept it also." He paused, His hand, she saw, had tightened on the brim of his hat. He was, she understood with a strange small shock, nervous. "I offer you my name and my household," he said. "I offer you the protection of my title. I offer you the honest promise that I will conduct myself with respect toward you in every matter, public and private, for as long as we both live. In return, I ask only that you give me your answer plainly. I do not require a long consideration. I do not require courtship. We are not children. If your answer is yes, I will call upon your family in the morning to make the arrangements formal. If your answer is no, I will leave this house, and you will not be troubled by me further." He stopped. He waited. She stood in her own front hall, with rainwater soaking into her slippers, and the Duke of Braemore, the enemy of her family, the stranger at the wrong door, asking her to marry him. She opened her mouth. The door at the back of the hall opened first. "Miss Linnet," came Mrs. Haverley's voice, warm and sleepy and entirely wrong for the moment. "Miss Linnet, is that the door? Who is it at this hour, dear heart?" Miss Linnet. She saw him understand. She saw the moment travel across his face from his eyes to his jaw. She saw his mouth open a fraction and close again. She saw his hand go still on the brim of his hat. For a full 3 seconds, neither of them moved or spoke, and Mrs. Haverley, coming round the corner with a lamp held high, stopped in her tracks in the middle of the hall and said, "Oh, Your Grace, forgive me. I was not expecting." And then she too saw what had happened, and went white. "Miss Caro," the Duke said. "Yes," said Linnet. "You are not Miss Greycourt." "No." "Miss Greycourt lives at number 12. "She does." "I have come to the wrong house." "You have." Mrs. Haverley, still in the middle of the hall, set the lamp down on the side table very slowly, as one might set down a thing that could explode. He stood for a moment with his hat in one hand and the rain still falling from his coat onto the floor. The clock in the hall struck the half-hour, a thin, polite sound, and when it had finished, he did something she did not expect. He bowed. It was a deep bow, the sort he would have given a queen, and when he straightened, his face had changed. The nervousness was gone. Something else had replaced it. She could not put a name to it yet. "Miss Caro," he said. "Your Grace." "My offer stands." She did not understand him. "I beg your pardon," she said. "My offer," he said, "stands." Behind her, Mrs. Haverley made a small, wordless sound, like a person who has been struck gently on the back. "Your Grace," Linnet said, "you have mistaken the house." "I have." "You have mistaken me for another woman." "I have." "You did not mean to ask me." "I did not." "Then withdraw your offer." "I will not." The words sat in the hall between them like a third person. She looked at him. She looked at Mrs. Haverley, who had both hands pressed to her mouth now. She looked at the open staircase, at the top of which, she realized without turning around, the footman Tom was standing in his nightshirt with a poker in one hand, having come down to see if she was being murdered. 3 witnesses. A duke's proposal of marriage, made in a private house, to a gentlewoman, in the presence of 3 witnesses who would tell. Servants talk. Servants always talk. Mrs. Haverley's sister kept the still room at number 12, and by breakfast the story would be on Miss Greycourt's tray with her toast. "Your Grace," she said, quite steadily, "you do not understand what you are saying." "I understand it perfectly." "You cannot mean it." "I am not in the habit of saying things I do not mean." "Then you are mad." He did not answer this. He looked at her with that cold, gray-blue gaze that was not quite cold, not any longer, and he said, "Miss Caro, I have made an error. The error is mine. I will not make you carry the cost of it. I have given my word in this house tonight, and whatever else I may be, I am a man who does not take his word back. If you will have me, I will marry you with the same honor I would have married Miss Greycourt. If you will not have me, you have only to say so, and I will leave. But I will not withdraw my offer. The offer will remain on the table until you refuse it." He bowed again. "I will call on you at noon," he said. And before she could answer, he turned, and the rain took him, and the door stood open to the street, and Lynette Caro was alone in her own front hall, with her housekeeper weeping softly behind her, and a proposal of marriage ringing in her ears from the last man on earth she would have chosen to hear it from. Mrs. Haverley closed the door first. She did it very carefully, as though it were a sleeping child, and then she leaned against it and pressed both hands flat against the wood and said, "Oh, my dear." "Don't," Lynette said. "Miss Lynette." "Don't, Mrs. Haverley, please. We must send for someone. There is no one to send for. Your brother. Remy is at sea. Your godmother, then. Lady Ormswood. She will know what. Lady Ormswood is at Bath, and the post is 3 days each way. And by the time any letter reaches her, half of London will have heard of this." She was surprised by her own voice. It was steady. Her hands were not. She held them clasped at her waist, because if she didn't hold them to each other, they would tremble, and she was not going to tremble in front of Mrs. Haverley. "Tom!" she called up the stairs, not looking. "Miss," came the boy's voice. He had not moved. He still had the poker. "Go back to bed, Tom. It is nothing. The gentleman mistook the house. Say nothing of this to anyone. Do you hear me, Tom? Not to cook. Not to the girl at the baker's in the morning. Not to anyone. Yes, miss. If I hear a word of it from the square, it will have come from you. Miss, I would never. Good boy. Go to bed." She heard him retreat up the stairs. She heard a door close softly above. She turned back to the hall, and Mrs. Haverley was watching her with wet eyes. "It will be all over the square by dinner," Mrs. Haverley said. Not unkindly, simply, the way one reports the weather. "I know. Miss Greycourt's engagement was to have been announced this week. Her mother has been ordering the lace. I know. My dear, what will you do?" "I do not know. He said he would not withdraw. He did. Do you think he meant it?" Lynette closed her eyes. She saw again that flicker across his face when she had said her father was dead. She saw his hand tightening on the brim of his hat. She saw the bow, the second bow, the one he had given her after he knew she was the wrong woman, the one that had been deeper than the first. "Yes," she said. "I think he meant it." She sat in the hall a long time after Mrs. Haverley had gone back to her bed. The candle burned down, and she did not replace it. The rain slackened, and she did not hear it slacken. At some point near dawn, she understood that she was crying, and she stopped. It was not the proposal that had undone her. It was not even the name. It was the bow. The second bow, after he had known. A man who had mistaken a house did not bow to the mistake. He apologized and left. He did not stand in a stranger's hall with rainwater in his hair and offer her his name with the same voice he had offered it to the woman next door. That was not a mistake. That was a man telling her something he hadn't words for. She thought of her father. Sir Hugh Caro, dead in a room above a Bristol coaching inn, because he could not face the drive at Carrowmere without the house at the end of it. She thought of her brother Remy on a blockade off Brest. She thought of her sister Kitty, dead at 19 of a fever. She thought of her mother, dead when Lynette was 6, remembered only as a voice singing in a garden she could no longer picture. And she thought, very quietly, that if she accepted the Duke of Braemore tomorrow at noon, she would be doing it against the wishes of every one of those ghosts, or for them, and she did not yet know which. By the time the gray light came through the fanlight above the door, she had resolved only one thing. When the Duke of Braemore called at noon, she would open the door to him herself. She would not hide behind Mrs. Haverley. She would look at the man who had destroyed her family and propose to her in the same breath, and she would make him say it to her face in daylight, and then she would know what to do. He came at noon exactly. Lynette had been dressed since 9. She had tried on 3 gowns and put on the plainest, a gray wool of her godmother's that did not fit quite right at the shoulders, because she did not want him to think she had dressed for him. She had pinned her hair and pinned it again. She had drunk a cup of tea she did not taste. At 11, she had sent Tom to see what the baker's wife across the square had heard. Tom had returned white-faced and said, "They are all saying it, miss," and she had thanked him and not asked what they were saying. At 11:45, Mrs. Haverley knocked at the drawing-room door. "There is a gentleman in the square." "Is it him?" "A plain carriage. No crest on the door." "Then it is him. He is trying to be discreet. Miss Lynette, if he says anything to you that you do not wish to hear, ring the bell. I shall be just outside the door." "Thank you." The clock struck 12 as she came down the stairs, and as it struck the last stroke, the knocker fell once, and Mrs. Haverley opened the door. Lynette stood in the drawing-room. She did not go into the hall. Let him come to her. He came. He was not wet now. He was not furious. He was not in black. He wore a gray coat over a cream waistcoat, his hair had been combed, and his boots were polished to a glass. He carried his hat in one hand and held out the other, empty, as a gentleman does when he enters a lady's drawing room. He looked, she thought, younger by daylight. Not young, but younger. Perhaps not 28 after all. Perhaps 27. "Miss Caro, Your Grace, thank you for receiving me. I was not certain whether I should. I am aware." She had meant to offer him a seat, but when he was in the room, she found she could not stand for him to be sitting, and so she said, "Will you walk with me? In the garden. The air is close in here." "Gladly." They walked. The garden at the back of number 14 was a small square of gravel, with a fountain that had not worked since Lynette had lived there. It was overlooked on 3 sides by the windows of the house and by the windows of number 12 across the low wall. She chose it for that. Let Miss Greycourt look out and see them. Let the servants at number 12 count the steps they took together. "Your Grace," she said when they were on the path, "I do not intend to marry you." "I see. I am telling you this now, at the outset, so that you may speak your mind freely, without any mistaken idea that I am being persuaded. Very well. I should be a very poor kind of woman if I accepted a proposal offered to me by accident." "You would not be accepting a proposal offered by accident. You would be accepting one that has been confirmed by daylight." "Do not be clever with me, Your Grace. I am not being clever. I am being precise. The proposal made last night was, as you say, made in error. The proposal I am making now is not. I make it now, knowing who you are, knowing your family, knowing all of it. If you refuse an offer made by a man who is himself." She stopped on the path. He stopped also. "Knowing my family," she said. "Yes." "Say it then." He did not pretend not to understand her. He said, "Your father was Sir Hugh Caro. He held Caro Mere in Gloucestershire, which had been in his family 4 generations. In the winter of 1808, he took a loan against the property. In the spring of 1809, he took another. In 1810, he could not meet the interest. The debts were purchased at auction by my father's man of business. Your father died the August after. I was then in India. I did not learn of any of it until my father's death, when the papers came into my hands." She had been holding her breath. She let it out slowly. And what did you do, Your Grace? I read them. And nothing. I did nothing. It had been done. It could not be undone. I told myself it was a matter of business. I told myself my father had acted within his rights. I told myself I had not a farthing of the original transaction on my own conscience. And it was a lie. I knew it was a lie when I told it to myself. I have known it since. The fountain, which had not worked for years, made a small, dry cough. Lynette realized she had not moved. Her feet were rooted in the gravel path. "You have come here," she said, "to tell me this. I came here last night to marry Miss Greycourt. I came here this noon to tell you this. There is a difference. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to hear it before you refuse me." She looked at him for a long moment. He stood with his hat in his hand, and his face turned half away from her, as though he could not quite bear to see her while he said it. "Your Grace, if you believe you owe my family a restitution, there are 100 ways to pay it that do not require me to marry you. I know. You could restore the estate, sell it back to my brother at the sum you paid for it. I intend to, if you refuse me. It will be done by the autumn, whichever way your answer goes." She was silent. She had not expected that. "Your Grace, why will you not withdraw?" He turned to her then, fully. His eyes were the color she remembered from the night, not cold, gray with some blue in them, like a sea under cloud. "Because," he said, and stopped. He looked at the small, dry fountain. "I have spent the better part of my life doing what was asked of me. I was to marry Miss Greycourt, because an uncle and a mother and a dead father had chosen her, and I had not the strength to refuse. I came to this square last night, intending to do what was asked of me one more time. I knocked on what I believed was the correct door, and a woman I had never seen before opened it, and looked at me with something in her face I had not seen in any other face for a very long time. It was not welcome. It was not admiration. I will not flatter myself. It was something. And when I understood I had come to the wrong door, I looked at that face again, and I thought that if I were to withdraw my offer in this hall, I should regret it every morning for the rest of my life. Your Grace, that is not a reason you have any duty to accept. No, I know it is not. It is a very sentimental reason, Your Grace. I am aware. I did not take you for a sentimental man. Neither did I." The fountain was quiet. The sun had moved. Somewhere above them, a window had opened, and Lynette did not need to turn to know that it was the window of the upstairs maid at number 12. "I will give you my answer in a week. A week. I will not be rushed by witnesses or by rumor or by honor. You will come back in 7 days, Your Grace, and you will have my answer then. Not before. A week is not. A week or nothing." He looked at her a moment longer. Then, very slightly, he smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile. It changed his face as light changes a room. "A week," he said. "I will call on the Thursday next at noon. I will not come sooner. I will not write. I will not send flowers. You have asked for a week. You shall have it undisturbed. Good day, Miss Caro." "Good day, Your Grace." He bowed. He left. Undisturbed the week was not. By that afternoon, the story had run the length of Ashcombe Square and turned the corner into Harley Street. By the next morning, it had reached St. James's. By the second morning, a Tuesday paper had printed, without names, but with enough detail for any reader of sense to identify the parties, a paragraph headed, "A most unfortunate error of address." By the third day, Lynette could not walk to the lending library without being followed by the eyes of every kitchen window on the square. On the fourth morning, a card was brought up to her. "Mrs. Haverley, When did Mr. Ashford last call at this house? He has never called at this house, Miss Linnet. That is what I thought. Send him up. Benedict Ashford was the second son of a baronet, whose lands ran up against what had once been her father's. He had known her since she was 10. He had been at her sister Kitty's funeral. He had been at her father's funeral. He had bowed to her twice in Hyde Park in the last year, and had not, on either occasion, stopped his horse. He came into her drawing room as though it were his own. Miss Caro, my dear Linnet, I came the moment I heard. Did you? Of course I did. I could not rest until I had seen you. Well, here we are. Sit down, my dear. You are trembling. I am not trembling, Mr. Ashford, and I am standing in my own drawing room. Pray do not invite me to sit in it. Something flickered behind his eyes. He recovered. He smiled. It was a handsome smile. She remembered for the first time in a long time how much she had once wanted him to smile it at her. Forgive me. You must understand. I am concerned for you. Are you? I have known you half your life, Linnet. You have known of me half my life, Mr. Ashford. It is not quite the same thing. The smile did not survive this. He reset his face. I came here to tell you that whatever pressure this man has brought to bear upon you, you have friends. You have family. You have, if I may be bold, me. You, Mr. Ashford. Me. I see. If there is any way in which the rumor, which I am certain is exaggerated, may be quieted without the necessity of you entering into a union with a man you cannot possibly. Mr. Ashford. The drawing-room door opened. Mrs. Haverley, without announcement, with a tea tray in her hands and an expression of flat warning on her face that meant she had heard every word through the panel. Behind her stood the Duke of Braemore. He was not supposed to be there. He had promised 7 days. Forgive me, Miss Caro, Mrs. Haverley said, setting the tea tray down with great care. His Grace was insistent. The Duke of Braemore said, I beg your pardon for the intrusion, Miss Caro. I am aware I am a day early. I am 3 days early. I had understood you were alone in the house. I find you are not. His eyes had not left Benedict Ashford since the door opened. Mr. Ashford, Linnet said, in a voice she did not recognize as her own. I believe you were just leaving. Benedict Ashford looked from Linnet to the Duke of Braemore and back again, and what traveled across his face was a rapid calculation of odds. She had seen it on horses before a jump. Of course, he said. Of course, Miss Caro. I shall call again when I may speak with you. Alone, Your Grace. Mr. Ashford, I had not had the pleasure. We are not acquainted, sir. Benedict Ashford. Oakwell, in Gloucestershire. Her late father was my own father's oldest friend. I have a duty of protection to this lady that runs a little further back than your Grace's acquaintance with her. Your duty of protection, the Duke said, evenly, appears to have visited Miss Caro for the first time in 7 years, on the morning she was written of in a Tuesday paper. I wish you joy of it. Good day. The Duke did not raise his voice. He did not move his hands from behind his back. He stood as a man stands at the far end of a very long room, and Benedict Ashford, who was not a small man, seemed all at once to become one. Good day, Miss Caro, Ashford said. Good day, Mr. Ashford. He left. The door closed. They were alone. Your Grace, you promised me 7 days. I did. It has been 4. I was told he had been seen at your door. I could not bear for you to be disturbed by him while I sat across the town on my word. You broke your word. I did. I will not defend it. I came. I am here. She looked at him. The tea tray Mrs. Haverley had set down between them had begun to steam gently. Outside, a carriage was moving down the square. The window of the upstairs maid at number 12 would be open again. Sit down, Your Grace. You may as well have the tea." They drank the tea. He did not sit until she sat. When he did sit, he chose the chair furthest from hers, set his cup on the small table between them, and did not touch it for some minutes. "Miss Caro, you know what Ashford is. He is a neighbor. He is a man who has had the acquaintance of your family for 20 years and paid you no call until a gossip paper paid you attention. Your Grace, you are very free with your opinions of a man you have met for 3 minutes. He has no fortune. His father has less. His elder brother drinks, and his elder brother's wife is a Rutherford. And the Rutherfords do not lend to Ashfords any longer. He is a handsome man, with charming manners, and nothing to recommend him but a name that was once better than his father could keep. You are describing a great many men of our acquaintance, Your Grace. I am describing this one? What is your object in describing him to me?" He looked at her very steadily. "Has he, in the whole of his acquaintance with you, ever spoken to you as though he saw you?" She did not answer. "Before the Tuesday paper, Miss Caro. In any one of the 20 years he has known your father's name." "Your Grace." "You need not answer. I can see the answer in your face. I am sorry to press you, but I could not sit in my rooms today knowing that man was in yours. And what is he here for, Your Grace? The same thing I am here for. You do not know that. I know that. You are Miss Linnet Caro, whose name was in the Tuesday paper in the same paragraph as the title of an English dukedom. You were one thing on Monday morning. You are another this morning. He is here because of the change." She looked down at her cup. The tea had gone cool. She had not drunk any of it. "You speak very plainly, Your Grace. I am aware it is not pleasant to hear. You were about to say, I think, that you are different. I was not about to say it. But you are, Your Grace. Are you not?" He did not answer at once. He picked up his tea. He set it down again without drinking. "I am not here because of the Tuesday paper, Miss Caro. I was here before the Tuesday paper. I knocked on your door before any paper in England knew your name. I do not claim to be a better man than Ashford. I claim only to have arrived earlier." It disarmed her. It had no right to. She had heard more graceful speeches from men who had meant less, and yet something in the flatness of it, the refusal to flatter himself, cracked something in her chest that she had not meant to let crack. "Your Grace, why did you say to me last week that if you withdrew your offer, you should regret it every morning of your life? Because it is true. You do not know me. I know you know my name. I know what my name means in your house. I know that when I gave it to you on your threshold, you did not spit in my face. I know you did not correct me when you might have. I know that you walked me to the driest part of a dry fountain because you wanted Miss Greycourt's upstairs maid to see us. I know that you gave me a week because you were not frightened of me, and you were not dazzled by me. I know that you, at this moment, are trying very hard to look as though what I have just said has not affected you, and you are not quite managing it." She set the cup down because her hand had begun to shake. "Your Grace, I shall go, Miss Caro. I have said too much. I will not come again before Thursday. You have my word." "Walk with me," she said. He stopped. "I beg your pardon. It is a fine afternoon. I have not been out of this house in 4 days. If we are seen walking together in Bond Street, every paper in London will print it, and by Friday, half of the nonsense being whispered will be replaced by the sense of it. Walk with me, Your Grace, publicly, as you are. I will put on my bonnet." She put on the bonnet. She took her godmother's parasol, the one with the ivory handle, because it was the handsomest thing she owned. She took his arm when he offered it and did not remark on the warmth of his sleeve through her glove. They walked. Bond Street, on a bright afternoon in the season, was a river of people. She saw faces turn toward them and away, and toward them again. She saw a woman she had sat next to at a concert last spring cut her dead on purpose, and another she did not know at all nod, as though they had been introduced. She saw a shop boy outside a glover's point them out to his master. She saw a writer for a morning paper make a small bow, with every appearance of having rehearsed it. Through all of it, the Duke of Braemore walked beside her at a measured pace and said, in his low, clipped voice, a running commentary that had nothing to do with the scandal. He said, "The green awning of the bookseller is 2 shades brighter this year than last." He said, "That woman's hat cannot be resting on her head by means of any force I recognize from natural philosophy." She did not laugh, because she was not going to laugh on Bond Street within 3 days of a Tuesday paper, but it was an effort. They reached the corner of Hanover Street before the thing happened. A boy came running out of a doorway with a fistful of printed sheets. He was a thin boy of perhaps 12, in a cap 2 sizes too large. He ran at them faster than sense, and he did not see Lynette clearly until he was at her elbow. And when he did see her, he did something no one of his trade had ever done. He stopped. He had a broadsheet in his hand, and he held it up to her face. "Miss," he said. "Look, miss." She did not look. She turned her head. But the Duke had already taken the broadsheet from the boy's hand in a movement so fast she did not see it, and had placed a coin in the boy's palm, and was steering Lynette with his other hand, gently but firmly to the side of the pavement, into the doorway of a closed shop. And the boy was gone, and the people on the pavement had not properly seen what had happened. His hand was at the small of her back, not pressing, not holding, simply there. A palm's weight of pressure through her pelisse, such as a man uses to keep a woman from stumbling. His other hand had taken her elbow. She was half turned against his chest. She could see the knot of his cravat very close to her face. She looked up. He looked down. They did not move for what she afterwards believed was 2 seconds, and which at the time was considerably longer. "Miss Caro, Your Grace, I have the broadsheet. Please burn it, Your Grace. I intend to. Is it very bad? It has a picture, Miss Caro. There is a picture of us. Oh, 'tis not a kind picture. No, I suppose not. Your hand is on my coat. So it is. You may leave it there as long as you require." She left it there 1 moment more. Then she took it away. She stepped out of the doorway. She lifted her chin and placed her hand once more on his arm, and they walked the rest of Bond Street at the same measured pace, and she did not look at a single face that passed. By that evening, every window in London that took a broadsheet had printed the picture. In it, the Duke of Braemore stood in a doorway holding a young woman to his coat. The caption underneath it read, in a printer's coarse hand, "The wrong door and a very willing captive." Lynette saw the broadsheet at breakfast because Mrs. Haverley had the sense to put it in front of her rather than hide it. She looked at it for a long time. Then she laughed. Mrs. Haverley stared. "Miss Lynette." "It is not me, Mrs. Haverley. It is a very fair likeness, dear heart. No, I mean, the woman in the picture is leaning toward him. I was not leaning toward him. The printer has taken a liberty with my posture. Miss Lynette, Mrs. Haverley, if I do not laugh at this, I shall weep at it, and I am choosing to laugh. Pass the butter." Mrs. Haverley passed the butter. Lynette buttered the toast with very great care. Her hand did not shake. She was rather proud of that. She set the knife down. She took a bite. She chewed. She swallowed. She said in a perfectly even voice, "Mrs. Haverley, I believe I am going to marry him." Mrs. Haverley dropped the tea. It was a pewter pot, which was a mercy. It landed on the carpet and did not break. "Miss Lynette." "Leave the pot, Mrs. Haverley. Sit down." "Miss Lynette, you cannot." Sit down, please." Mrs. Haverly sat on the edge of the breakfast chair, as though the chair might give way. "Dear heart, a person does not make a decision of this magnitude over a broadsheet at breakfast. You must write to Lady Ormswood. You must wait for your brother." "Mrs. Haverly, how old am I?" "Miss Linnet." "How old, Mrs. Haverly?" "You are 24. And what is my situation?" "You are companion to one, and you live upon the allowance of a woman who will not be alive very much longer. And when she is not, I will have my own brother's cottage, and you will have nowhere in the world. And that is what you are asking me to say to you, and I shall not say it. You have said it, and you are right. It is not a reason to marry. It is not the only reason." Mrs. Haverly looked at her for a long moment. Then she put her hand over her face. "Oh, my dear. You like him?" "I did not say that." "You did not need to. I find him less hateful than I expected to." "That is what you will put in the Times, is it? Miss Linnet Caro is pleased to accept the hand of His Grace, the Duke of Braemore, whom she finds less hateful than she expected." Linnet laughed. It came out of her like water from a stopped pipe. "You are a horror, Mrs. Haverly. I have been called worse, not by you." She went upstairs. She sat at the small writing desk by the window and took out a sheet of paper and trimmed a pen and sat for a long time, holding the pen above the paper without writing. At last, she wrote a single line. "Your Grace, I should prefer you did not wait until Thursday." She sent it by Tom, who ran it across town within the hour and returned with an answer that contained even fewer words than her own. "I shall come at 3. He came at 3. He was not in gray. He wore the blue of a man who had been at his club. He looked, she thought, as if he had not slept. For a long moment neither of them spoke. "Miss Caro." "Your Grace." "You wrote." "I did." "You have an answer." "I have." He waited. She said, "Yes." He did not move. He did not speak. He simply stood, holding his hat, and looked at her. Then, very slowly, he put the hat on the chair beside him, as though he could not trust his fingers to hold it. "Thank you, Miss Caro. I will not disappoint you." "You may, Your Grace. I expect you will, once or twice. I am reserving the right to disappoint you also." "That is fair. Your uncle will not be pleased." Something passed across his face at the word uncle. It was the first time she had seen him in any way troubled since he had walked into her drawing room. "No, he will not. But that is my business. It is mine also now. Then, we shall have the management of it together." He took up his hat. He bowed. At the door he paused. "Miss Caro, there is an assembly on Friday next, at the Earl of Renford's. My uncle will be present. Miss Greycourt will be present. A great many people who have read the Tuesday paper will be present. I shall not attend unless you attend with me. If the thought is intolerable, we shall invent a reason to be elsewhere. If you wish to face it, I will be at your door at 9. I shall be ready at 9, Your Grace." "Good." He left. Mrs. Haverly came up the moment she heard the front door close. "Miss Linnet." "I said yes, Mrs. Haverly. Heaven preserve us. I believe we shall need it." By the Friday of the assembly, she understood very well that she had agreed to walk into a room full of people who knew her only from a printer's caricature, on the arm of a man who had proposed to the wrong woman at the wrong door, and then refused to take the words back. She understood also that she had no idea what she would do when Miss Greycourt was put in front of her. And she understood, beneath all of that there was a third person in the story whose hand had not yet been seen, and whose name was not Benedict Ashford. It was the Duke's uncle, and he had not spent the week waiting. The Earl of Renford's house stood on Arlington Street, fronted in Portland stone and lit, on the Friday of his assembly, by a double row of link boys stretching from the curb to the door. Their torches threw a light up onto the first-floor windows that made the glass look as though a fire had been set inside. Every carriage in the season was on that street. The jam reached to Piccadilly. Linnet, in a pale gown that was not quite white and not quite ivory, sat beside the Duke of Braemore in his crested carriage, and did not speak while they inched forward. "Miss Caro, Your Grace, you have not said a word since we left Ashcombe Square. I'm conserving them." "For what?" "For the first fool who speaks to me." He almost smiled. He did not quite. "I will not leave your side tonight unless you send me." "Do not promise. It is bad luck." "I am not promising. I am stating a fact." "Then state another. Tell me who will be in that room." "My uncle, Miss Greycourt, your admirer, Mr. Ashford, if he has procured an invitation, which by report he has. Every member of the House of Lords currently in town, a number of bishops, and the largest collection of women in feathers that England can assemble in one gallery." "I see. You will not be the worst-dressed woman in the room, Miss Caro." "Your Grace, you will not be the best-dressed either." She did laugh then. She could not help it. Was that intended as consolation? It was intended as truth. "You are not improving your case, Your Grace. I am aware." Their carriage reached the curb. A footman opened the door. The link boys' torches hissed in the damp. She stepped down on the Duke's hand and looked up at the house, and for a single moment she considered turning round and getting back into the carriage and going home. She pressed her gloved hand into her skirt and found the small, hard thing she had sewn into the hem that morning, which was her father's seal ring on a thread, which was the whole of her courage, and she walked up the steps beside him. They were announced at the top of the staircase. "His Grace the Duke of Braemore, and Miss Caro." The room went quiet. Not entirely. A quartet in the far corner kept playing. A woman near the window laughed at a joke she had finished before the name landed. But the people nearest the door stopped talking, and the ones beyond them did. And the quiet traveled across the gallery like a ripple across water. Within the space of 5 seconds, there was not a pair of eyes in the room that was not on them. Linnet put her hand on the Duke's arm and set her face in an expression she had practiced in Mrs. Haverley's glass the night before, and they walked forward into the ripple. It closed behind them. The talk resumed, louder, deliberately louder, people making a point of not watching. A footman went by with champagne and did not meet her eye. They were in the room, and the room had seen them, and the room was pretending it had not. Braemore. A voice, low, carrying. An older man stood at the edge of the crowd, a glass of something pale in one hand. He did not look at her. He looked at the Duke. "Uncle, you came. I came. Then you have brought her. I have. Present her." The Duke did not move. "Uncle, present her, Corvin." "Miss Caro, may I present my uncle, Lord Weatherston?" "Uncle, Miss Linnet Caro, of Ashcombe Square." She curtsied. Her knees were not quite steady, but they held. "My lord." Lord Weatherston did not bow. He looked at her. He had the Duke's gray-blue eyes without any of the thing that lived behind them in the Duke. His were glass. "Miss Caro, you have had a week of considerable notice." "My lord, you bear it well." "I bear it because I must." "Indeed. And do you bear also my nephew's name?" "I do not bear it yet. There are banns. There are settlements. There is a church. There are a great many things, including the objections of his family. His mother has not yet been consulted. His uncles have not yet been satisfied. The Halsworth estate is not a thing one marries into on a week's acquaintance. A young woman of 24, who has lived upon her godmother's charity for 3 years, understands, I am sure, the magnitude of what she is undertaking. I understand its magnitude, my lord. I also understand its structure. I am, by your nephew's offer, to become his wife. I am not, by your nephew's offer, to become your niece. There is, in the two conditions, a difference I shall take pains to preserve." A small beat of silence. She felt the Duke's arm go very still under her hand. Somewhere behind them, a woman laughed at an anecdote that had nothing to do with this conversation, and the laugh sounded very loud in the space around them. Lord Weatherston's mouth did something that was not a smile. Indeed, Miss Caro, we shall see." He moved away. The Duke did not follow him with his eyes. He looked down at Linnet. For the first time that evening, his face was fully turned to her, and what she saw in it was a kind of contained astonishment, as though a small and useful object he had not expected to find had just been put into his hand. "Miss Caro." "Your Grace." "You are not to make me fall in love with you in a public gallery. It will not do." "Then let us dance, Your Grace. A country dance will save us both." They danced. The country dance brought them together and apart along the length of the gallery, and she saw in the corner of her vision, each time she turned, a woman watching her with an expression she could not read. Miss Greycourt, of number 12. She was taller than Linnet had expected, and paler, and had a gravity about her that the caricatures did not allow. Between two movements of the dance, Linnet found herself face to face with her across a gap of perhaps 8 feet, and for 3 seconds they held each other's eyes. Then Miss Greycourt nodded. Not cold, not warm. A nod, the kind a woman gives another woman to say, "I see you, and I will not make this harder." Linnet returned it, a fraction later, with a fraction more warmth than she had meant to give. The dance moved them on. "Miss Greycourt," she said, when the Duke took her arm again at the head of the set. "I saw." She nodded at me. "She is a very decent woman. I had always thought so." "Then why did you not marry her?" "Because I did not love her. And it transpires because I love a woman at number 14. She did not look at him. She said, very low, "Your Grace, that is twice. Twice. Twice you have told me something in a public room that you had no business telling me in a public room. Yes. I cannot dance again if you will keep doing it. Then we shall stand a while." They stood a while. At the edge of the gallery, by a window that had been propped open because the candles had made the room too hot, a footman offered her a glass of lemonade, and she took it and held it, and did not drink. A woman who had not once acknowledged her existence in 5 years came forward and introduced herself, and said a great many kind, nervous words, and retreated. A girl Linnet did not know curtsied at her. The tide of the room was turning. Not all of it. Not enough. But a tide was turning. She had begun almost to believe the evening would survive her when Benedict Ashford stepped out of a doorway at the far end of the gallery and caught her eye. He bowed. He came forward. By a circuitous social route he arrived, with every appearance of happy accident, at the Duke's elbow. "Your Grace, Miss Caro, may I congratulate you both? Mr. Ashford." "Might I ask for the honor of a dance, Miss Caro?" Linnet looked at the Duke. He looked as though he had been asked to eat a stone, but he said, "Miss Caro will determine that question herself. One dance, Mr. Ashford, and a short one." He led her out. By some perverse luck of the program, it was a minuet, the kind of dance that left long intervals of holding hands at arm's length. "Miss Caro." "Mr. Ashford, you look splendid this evening. The week has sharpened you. You were always a handsome woman. You are now a striking one. You are describing the effect of publicity, Mr. Ashford. not the effect of affection. They turned. His hand found hers at the top of the figure. He held it a half-second longer than the dance required. "Linnet, you cannot marry him." "That is a strong word, Mr. Ashford." "It is the right one. You know what he is. You know the family. The father made a great deal of money from the ruin of his neighbors, and he made a great deal of it from the ruin of your neighborhood. I am not telling you anything you do not know. Your father died because of the Halsworths. You were made penniless because of the Halsworths. Now a son of that house arrives on the same square where you live at midnight and proposes to you by what he calls mistake and will not withdraw. Does that not suggest something to you?" "It suggests you have been at your reading, Mr. Ashford. It suggests that this is not a love match. It is a conscience match. He's marrying you because his house owes yours a debt it cannot pay any other way, and because any public man in his position, on being discovered, proposing to the wrong woman, would rather marry her than face the laugh of London. You are being married, Linnet, from guilt and pride combined. And when the guilt passes, and it always does, there will be a duchess at Braymore Hall who was married for atonement, and she will have a very long life to sit in her rooms and think of it." She did not answer. She could not, for a moment. The figure of the dance had taken him a pace away, and the music was covering the silence between them, and he had planted the thing very neatly indeed, like a man laying a trap in undergrowth, not caring that she saw the string. "Mr. Ashford." "Linnet, do not call me that." "I am sorry, Miss Caro. I am sorry that you are being used. I am sorry that a handsome and intelligent woman is being made into a public apology. I offer you, Miss Caro, not a duchy. I offer you a small, comfortable estate in Gloucestershire, a near neighbor to your father's old lands, a husband who chose you without any element of mistake. You have only to leave this room with me now, tonight, before the banns are read." The minuet ended. She made her curtsy. He made his bow. She did not speak to him again. She did not look back at him as she walked from the floor. The Duke was waiting at the edge of the gallery. His face, when he looked at her, was not composed. He saw what had happened without her having to speak. "Miss Caro, come with me." "Where?" "Out of this room." He led her through a door into a small antechamber, and from there into a library that had a fire in the grate, and a single lamp burning on a reading table, and no one else in it. He closed the door behind them. He did not sit. He stood with his back to the fire and looked at her. "What did he say to you?" She told him. Every word. The guilt, the atonement, the offer of Gloucestershire, the Duchess sitting in her rooms for a long life thinking of it. The Duke did not speak for a moment. The firelight moved on the side of his face. A log settled in the grate. Somewhere beyond the library door, the quartet struck up a new air, and the sound of it came to them faintly through the walls, like music played under water. "Miss Caro, I wish you to ask me the question you wish to ask me. Is it true? No. Is that all? That is all. No, it is not true. I do not love you because I owe your father. I do not love you as a compensation. I love you because I walked onto your step in the rain and could not leave it when I understood I was meant to. I should say yes. It would be simpler to say yes. My uncle would be satisfied. Mr. Ashford would be satisfied. Half the women in the next room would be satisfied. But I will not say yes because it is not true, and I have tired of the use of things that are not true." He stopped. He took a breath. He went on. "I didn't know you on the step last week. I know you now. Every day of this week I have known you more, and every day of it I have found it less possible to pretend I came to your door by accident. I do not believe in accident. I believe I went to the address I was given because a man I once called Uncle gave it to me, knowing my mother had written it differently. I believe I stood on your step because at the bottom of every man who does as he is told, for 30 years, there is a part that goes looking, when it can, for the door that is not the door he was sent to. That is why, when I looked at you, I did not withdraw. And that is why, if you send me away tonight, I shall stand in your square until morning and the morning after that, and the longer I stand there, the more the caricaturists will sell, and eventually you will come down the steps and tell me to leave off, and I shall ask you then, as I am asking you now, whether you will marry a man who does not know how to leave a doorstep he is mistaken. She had not known she was crying until a tear went into the corner of her mouth. Your Grace, I have done it again. I am sorry. Do not be. Miss Caro, do not call me that. Not tonight. Not in this room. What shall I call you? Say my name, Your Grace. Only that. Say it once. Linnet. 3 days after the Renford Assembly, Lord Weatherston took his nephew to White's and kept him there for 6 hours. Linnet did not see the Duke for those 3 days. She had a note on the morning after the assembly, written in his own hand, which said only, "Uncle has required a meeting. I am summoned. I will call on Thursday, as arranged. I remain your faithful C." She put it in the drawer of her writing desk and did not take it out again. The square watched for him to come back. He did not. The upstairs maid at number 12 had a new post at the window. The Mises Haverly carried her chin a little higher than ordinary and answered no question that was put to her at the tradesmen's doors. Linnet did not leave the house. She wrote 3 letters she did not send. She read a book she could not afterwards have named. She sat at the window on the second evening and watched a lamplighter go the round of the square, and she wondered whether, when a woman has been written of in a broadsheet and danced with a duke in a public gallery and stood on a stair at dawn, listening to his hesitation, any smaller kind of life remains possible for her. On the Wednesday afternoon, a Mr. James Renford, cousin to the Earl, called at number 14 with a message from the Duke, which was that he was prevented from calling in person that afternoon by an urgent communication from his uncle, but remained, in his regard for Miss Caro, unshaken. Linnet thanked Mr. Renford for his courtesy. When he had left, she sat for an hour in the window, looking down at Ashcombe Square, and did not speak. By the Thursday evening, the sky had gone the color of a bruise. Mrs. Haverly lit every candle in the drawing-room at 6:30, because the storm coming up over the rooftops beyond St. James's had made the light so strange the house felt like a ship at sea. Tom went round the ground floor, fastening the inside bolts on the window shutters. The first thunder broke at 7. It came so low and close that a vase on the mantelpiece jumped. The Duke's carriage reached the curb at 7:15, at a run. He came up the steps with his greatcoat over his head. Mrs. Haverly had the door open before he reached it. Your Grace. Mrs. Haverly. It is biblical out there. I am aware. He came into the drawing room. His hair was wet. His coat was wet. He had not sent word. I apologize for the state of me. Your Grace, sit down. You are dripping on the carpet. He sat. Mrs. Haverly took his coat. A second crash of thunder rattled the sash. Lightning turned the window white. Outside on the square, a horse in some neighbor's carriage screamed, and a coachman shouted at it, and the shouting was lost under the next rumble. Your Grace, you cannot go back to Hanover Square in this. I had not intended to stay. I had intended half an hour. Half an hour from now, you will be sitting in a carriage stuck in Piccadilly in a storm that, by the look of it, will not break till morning. Your Grace, I am going to make up the blue bedroom. You will stay. Miss Caro. We are engaged, Your Grace. You may sleep in a house in which your affianced wife also sleeps, provided there are servants enough to witness the distance between you. Mrs. Haverley can count bedrooms with the best of them. The storm kept on. It did not break at 11. It did not break at midnight. By 1 in the morning, the wind was tearing slates off the roof at number 12 and throwing them into the square. By 2, Lynette was wide awake in her dressing gown, listening to the weather and to her own thoughts, neither of which she could at that moment silence. She went downstairs. There was a lamp in the library. She had not thought anyone would be there. He was. He was standing at the window. He had thrown a dressing gown over a shirt and breeches. His feet were bare. He was holding a book that she was almost certain he had not opened. He turned when he heard her. Your Grace. Miss Caro. You could not sleep. No, nor could I. I had hoped the storm would keep everyone in their rooms. So had I. The book in his hand was Cook's Voyages. She saw it by the lamplight and almost laughed. Above the door of the library at number 14, there was a small painting of a ship, a frigate under short sail off a coast she had never learned the name of. She had sat beneath it many evenings and thought of Remy at sea. She saw him look at the painting and look back at her. That ship. It is not the ship I grew up with, but it is very like. There was one at Carrowmere in the same style. I believe they were a pair, by the same hand. The other went when the house went. My brother and I used to make up voyages for it when we were small. He was always the captain. I was always the sister who waited at home. And now he is the captain, in fact. And I have given up waiting at home. Have you? Almost. He did not speak for a moment. The wind had dropped, and the rain sounded now against the window in a different rhythm. Softer, steadier. He set the book down on the reading table. He did not cross to her. Your Grace. Lynette? Say it again. Lynette. I did not know a name could sound that way when a person meant it. I do not know any other way to say it. Your Grace. Corvin. Corvin. She had not said his Christian name aloud in her life before that moment. She heard it settle in the room, as though a small weight had been put on a table. He did not move. She did not move. Corvin, if we do this. Yes. We must do it without looking for excuses later. I am not going to spend my married life wondering whether you came to my door because a clerk of your uncle's wrote a number wrong, or whether I opened it because I had been too long at home with a sleepy housekeeper. I am going to decide, tonight, that you came because we were to find each other. And I am going to hold to that decision in every weather that comes after this one. Do you understand? I understand. Say it. We were to find each other. Again, as though you mean it. We were to find each other. Lynette. We were to find each other. He crossed the lamp. She had not seen him move. He put his hand under her jaw, and he said her name again, and he kissed her. It was not a long kiss. It could not have been. She pulled away first. She put her hand against his chest, not pushing, only resting, and felt the speed of his heart through the linen of his shirt. She looked up at him. That does not change what I am. That does not change what you are. No, we are not different people because of a kiss in a library in a storm. No. Good night, Corvin. Good night, Lynette. She went upstairs. She did not sleep. She lay in her bed and watched the window. And sometime in the very early morning, the storm broke at last, and the rain began to fall straight and steady, and not slantwise. And she knew the worst of it was over. She closed her eyes. She did not expect to sleep. She was woken by a hammering on the front door. It wasn't yet 7. The hammering was violent and sustained, and came in a pattern that did not belong to a visitor. It was the pattern of a man who expected the door to open. Lynette sat up. She heard Mrs. Haverley in the corridor. She heard Tom running. She pulled on her dressing gown. She was at the top of the stairs when she heard the voice. "Where is he?" "Lord Weatherston." "My lord." That was Mrs. Haverly. "My lord. His Grace." "Do not pretend he is not in the house. His carriage is in the mews. Where is he?" "My lord." "Wake him. Tell him his uncle requires him. Tell him his uncle has waited for him at Hanover Square since before dawn." The Duke's voice, cool, coming from the drawing-room door. He had heard. "Uncle, Corvin, you have spent the night in this house." "I have." "You were expected at my house last evening and you did not come." "There was a storm, uncle. There was a storm by which you were, I see, detained conveniently. You will come with me now. You will come with me to Hanover Square. You will not return to Ashcombe Square this day, nor any other day, until you have withdrawn the proposal you made under mistake and to which you have clung from pride." Linnet, on the stairs, did not breathe. The Duke did not answer at once. She waited. She heard him draw breath. She heard him say, "Uncle, I will come with you to Hanover Square. I will come now." He had not said the second half of the sentence, the half that said, "and I will not withdraw." Linnet put her hand against the wall. The Duke came out into the hall. He looked up. He saw her on the stairs. He looked at her for the space of perhaps 3 seconds. It was not long. It was not quite long enough. He opened his mouth to say something. His uncle behind him said, "Corvin, now." The Duke went out of the house with his uncle. The door closed. A footman carried after them his coat. Linnet stood on the stairs a long time. By 10 that morning, a note had come. It was in the Duke's hand. It was one sentence. It said, "I am required to travel to Braemore this afternoon on family business. I shall return as soon as I am able. See." By noon, another note had come, from a Mr. Pilkington, clerk to the Duke's solicitor, informing Miss Carrow that certain settlements were under review and would be further communicated upon His Grace's return from the country. By 3, the knocker sounded a third time, and Mrs. Haverly came up to the drawing-room white-faced and said, "Miss Linnet, your brother, Remy." He came into the room in his sea-coat with salt still on the collar. He was taller than she remembered. His face was browner. He took her by both hands. "Little Lynn, Remy, I had a letter from an Ashford at Bordeaux, a strange letter. I put in at Portsmouth last night, and came up this morning without pausing for a shave, as you see. Tell me what has happened. Slowly, from the beginning." She sat him down in the chair by the fire. She put a glass in his hand. She stood at the mantelpiece because she could not sit. She told him. She did not cry. She told him about the Duke at the wrong door, and the refusal to withdraw, and the confession about Carrowmere, and the Tuesday paper, and the broadsheet on Bond Street, and Lord Weatherston, and Benedict Ashford, and the Assembly, and the library in the storm, and the uncle at dawn, and the 3 seconds on the stairs, and the 2 notes that had come since. Remy listened. He did not interrupt her. He drank the glass she had put in his hand, as if it were water. When she was finished, he set the glass down very carefully, as though to put it down, crooked would be to break something, and he stood. "Let me be sure I have it, Lynn. He proposed by mistake. He refused to withdraw. He paid you court in daylight with our family's history on the table between you. He spent a night in this house in a thunderstorm. He kissed you. His uncle arrived at dawn. He hesitated. For how long? 3 seconds. 3 seconds. 3 seconds, Remy. And he has been gone 4 days. 4 days." Remy did not speak at once. He walked to the window. He looked down at the square. "Get your trunks." "Remy, get your trunks. You are coming with me to Portsmouth, then to Aunt Agatha's in Cornwall. You are not staying one more night in this house. I am not a hard man, Lynn. A man may be slow of tongue. A man may be afraid of his family. I have been both of those things. But a man who cannot answer his uncle with his betrothed on the stairs is not a man you marry. Pack. I know. Pack. She packed. Mrs. Haverly helped her. Tom carried the first trunk down. But ships and coaches will not move upon a sister's grief. Remy had to go to the Admiralty for his leave, and the Portsmouth coach would not run until the Monday. And so 3 days passed, while the trunks stood corded in the hall, and the house held its breath. Lynette stood in her bedroom on the third afternoon, with her writing case in her hands, and looked at the 3 letters she had received from the Duke, and she did not burn them. She put them in the writing case. She closed it. From downstairs, Mrs. Haverly called, "Miss Lynette! Miss Lynette! There is a carriage in the square." "I know, Mrs. Haverly. It is Remy's." "It is not Remy's." It was not Remy's. It was a plain carriage with no crest on the door. Lynette, at the window of her bedroom, saw a man step down onto the curb, and another man, much taller, already standing on the pavement in a greatcoat and hat, and they turned and faced each other with perhaps 6 feet of wet Ashcombe Square between them. The taller was the Duke of Braemore. The shorter was Benedict Ashford. She did not know whether to run down or to stay at the window. She stayed. Mrs. Haverly was at her elbow. Tom was on the landing with the second trunk. Remy was halfway down the staircase with a pistol she had not known he owned in his hand. "Remy." "Lynn." "Stay." "Remy, don't shoot anyone." "I am not going to shoot anyone. I am going to be visible." He went out into the square and stood in the door of the house with the pistol at his side, and the 2 men on the curb saw him, and neither moved toward the door. Lynette raised the sash and leaned out. She heard the Duke say, "Mr. Ashford." She heard Ashford say, "Your Grace, you find me here in an errand of some urgency. I am come to attend Miss Caro in her removal from this house, as a neighbor of her family, as a friend. Mr. Ashford, you have no standing at this door. Your Grace, I understand you have left Miss Caro to be collected by her brother, while you attend your uncle in the country. Under such circumstances, a near friend of her family. A near friend of her family would not have learned of her removal from Ashcombe Square before her brother had sent word of it from within her own hall. You knew, Mr. Ashford, because you have had the square watched for 3 days. I have had the man who watched it for you spoken to this morning in a small room in Bow Street. Do not insult the intelligence of this household by pretending otherwise." Ashford did not answer. "Furthermore, Mr. Ashford, I have in my hand the following. A note from a Mr. Pembroke of Pembroke and Lisle, solicitors, acknowledging that one Benedict Ashford of Oakwell has on 3 occasions this quarter presented notes of hand against credit he does not possess. A second, from the steward of the Gloucestershire Assembly Rooms, acknowledging that a Mr. Benedict Ashford has, in the last month, proposed marriage privately to 2 young women of means. And a third, from Lord Rutherford, who begs me to remind Mr. Ashford that the Rutherford family will not under any circumstance support the publication of his recent engagement notice. Mr. Ashford, your errand here is concluded. Leave this square. Do not write. Do not call. Do not address any person of my household or of Miss Caro's household on any matter hereafter. I shall see these 3 notes into the hands of your father before Sunday if you do not. Good day." Benedict Ashford stood in the square with his mouth open. The rain had started again, a slow, soft rain, and it was falling on his hat, and he was not moving to brush it off. After a long moment he turned and walked to his carriage and got into it, and it took him away down the line of the square, and it did not come back. The Duke watched it out of sight. Then he turned. He looked up at the window where Lynette was, He looked at Remy in the doorway with the pistol. "Captain Caro, Your Grace, I believe I have given your sister reason to doubt me. I believe you have, Your Grace. May I come in? That is not my decision, Your Grace." Linnet at the window said, "Yes, come in." He came in. He took off his hat. Mrs. Haverly was crying in the hall and pretending she was not. Tom stood on the landing with the second trunk and did not move. The Duke of Braemore, in the hall of number 14 Ashcombe Square, went down on one knee. "Linnet, I have spent 3 days with my uncle. I have told him that I will not withdraw my offer. I have told him that if the family trust cannot accommodate my marriage to you, then I will accept the removal of my name from it. I have told him that the Grey Court arrangement is void, and that the Halsworth estate will this quarter formally restore Caromere to your brother, together with its furniture and its rents since 1810, with an apology and interest. I have told him that I am going to marry you on the first Thursday after the banns can be read in St. George's. I have told him that if he will not stand at my wedding, he will not stand at my hearth. He has accepted none of it. He has threatened to block the reading of the banns. He has said he will write to the Archbishop. He has said many things, and I have let him say them. And I have come to you anyway, because the only answer I owe to any of it is the one I had not given you on your stair. I have not come to you with his blessing. I have come without it. I have come to you because 3 days ago I stood in your hall and could not say aloud, in front of him, what I should have said. What I should have said is this: Uncle, I will not come with you. My place is in this house. I will never leave this threshold unless I leave it with her. I said the first half to him. I did not say the second. It is the truth of why I hesitated. I was not hesitating over you. I was gathering the courage to say it in his face. I did not gather it fast enough. For that I ask your forgiveness. For nothing else. I am not sorry for coming to your door. I am not sorry for the week since. I am not sorry for last night. I am sorry for the 3 seconds on your stair. Linnet, if you will still have me, I remain, unwithdrawn, yours." The hall was absolutely silent. Outside, the rain fell on the square. Tom, on the landing, was crying quite openly. Mrs. Haverly had both hands pressed to her mouth. Remy had lowered the pistol to his side, and his knuckles on the grip had gone white. Linnet came down the stairs. She stopped at the last one. She did not kneel. She did not take his hand. She looked down at him. "Corvin." "Linnet, stand up." He stood. "I shall have you." She did not say anything more, because Mrs. Haverly's sob, which had been held in the wings of her apron for a full minute, by force of professional dignity, at last broke out of her, and under cover of it, Remy put the pistol down on the hall table and came and kissed his sister's hair and shook the Duke's hand, and nothing more was said in that hall for some time. They were married in the October of that year, by banns in St. George's, Hanover Square. Lord Weatherston did not attend. His threat to write to the Archbishop came to nothing, because the Archbishop, who had read the Tuesday paper like every other man in town, declined to involve himself in a matter he described in a letter that afterwards found its way into several drawing rooms as one best handled by a little plain speaking between families. Miss Greycourt did attend. She sat, with notable poise, in the pew reserved for family on the bride's side, a decision recorded in the Morning Post as the most gracious act of that unusual year. She married 2 seasons later a second son of a northern earl, of whom nothing had been expected, and from whom she drew a great deal, and was said to be contented. Captain Remy Caro gave the bride away. He wore his sea coat. Mrs. Haverly, in a dress the Duke had ordered for her himself, did not drop the tea. Caromere was restored to Captain Caro in the November of that same year. The Duke rebuilt the west wing, which had been allowed to fall. The rose garden within the walled yard, planted by Linnet's grandmother in the year of Trafalgar, and kept by a head gardener who had stayed on through the sale because he had not been asked to leave, was found to have in it every rose it had been planted with, and 3 new ones that had rooted themselves in the interval. A small brass plaque was put up at the gate of the walled garden, with the names of Linnet's father and sister and mother on it. Remy took for himself a small cottage on the edge of the home farm, from which he could see the sea on a clear day. It was in the late autumn of the year after their wedding, at Braemore Hall, that Linnet asked the Duke of Braemore the question she had saved for more than a year. They were in a long gallery that looked out over a park, brown with leaf fall. A fire was lit. The windows rattled in a wind that was not quite a storm. She was sitting in a low chair by the fire, and he was standing at one of the windows, with his hands behind his back, and the light on him was the light of a late sun on a wet day, the color of old honey. Corvin. I have a question. Ask. The first night, at my door, when Mrs. Haverley came round the corner and said my name. Yes, you understood your error. I did. You had a choice. You could have apologized and left. You could have withdrawn. I could. You did not. I did not. Why? He did not turn from the window at once. She watched the line of his shoulder under the coat. When he turned, he was smiling the small, rare smile she had not known existed until the garden at Ashcombe Square. I have told you this, Linnet, or a version of it. I am surprised you ask again. I should like to hear the right version. Then the right version is this. I knew. When I understood my error, I knew. I haven't told you, because it seemed a thing too heavy to put on a woman who had not yet agreed to marry me. But I knew. I looked at you on your threshold, and I thought, before Mrs. Haverley had finished her sentence, very quietly, so this is the woman the whole of my life has been arriving at. I mistook a door. I did not mistake you. She did not speak. That is all. Corvin. Linnet. I also knew. Did you? I did not correct you. I could have. I had a full sentence in which to say, Your Grace, you have come to the wrong house. I did not. I let you finish. I wanted to hear you finish. I have also not told you that, because it seemed too heavy to put on a man who had not yet learned not to apologize. I see. So we are both guilty of a small harmless thing. Yes, Corvin. Yes. I chose you before I knew I was choosing. Yes, Linnet. As did I. Outside, the wind moved in the long park. Somewhere in the house, a servant was closing a shutter against the coming dark. The lion's head knocker from the door of number 14 Ashcombe Square had been taken off by the Duke's order in the week before their wedding, and was now fixed to the door of a smaller cottage in the grounds of Braemore Hall, where Mrs. Haverley lived out her last years in great comfort, and where it was polished every Sunday by Tom, who had grown into a steward. When any person knocked on that smaller door, the sound carried very faintly up to the big house, and the Duke of Braemore, who had a keen ear, would always lift his head and smile. Lord Weatherston did come, in the end, to Braemore Hall in the summer of the 2nd year of their marriage. He came without announcement and stayed 3 days. He did not apologize. The Duke did not require him to. They sat together in the long gallery one afternoon and spoke of the estate, and when he left, he bowed to Linnet at the carriage door with something that was not quite warmth, but was no longer glass. She did not forgive him. She did, a little, forgive his nephew for having once hoped to be forgiven by him. The door stood open to whoever came, and Linnet Carow, once of Ashcombe Square, now of Braemore Hall, who had opened a door in the rain at midnight to the wrong man and found him to be the right one, was never again, in the whole of her life, afraid of a knock.